I'm alive. I shouldn't be.
He should not be alive. This is unfucking believable.
From the heart of trucker America, my boy Reed Coverdale, host of The Naturalist Capitalist.
This is what government does. It sucks.
If you think you're going to win people over by stating commonplaces, you're just selling the other part.
It is about dictating every transaction that you have for the rest of your life.
Mr. Potato Head.
Coverdale is the guy to be president of the United States.
You intimidated me with your perfect 74 stat.
That was the beginning of my problems.
He died doing what he loved, chasing a minor.
But I'll put a 50 cal attached to my Suburban.
Libertarians need to get out of New York.
The gulag is going to be in your house.
This guy's a fucking murderer. He deserves to be in a
dungeon. Gotta get him out of that truck at night and get him into the White House.
Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to another episode of The Naturalist Capitalist. As you guys know, I've been working on Jeremy Kauffman's campaign since I moved back to New Hampshire. He's coming on the show again today, but before he comes on, I just want to play his latest ad. I think it's the best one so far. This one, you know, all the other ones have been kind of funny, but this one is pretty serious and just kind of skips all the bullshit and gets right to it. So I'm just going to play that real quick and then we'll bring him on.
Months ago, I put out a satirical ad saying that war is gay. I'm here to tell you the truth. War is retarded. It's retarded. We're not supposed to say that word, but this is exactly why we need to say it. Because if you support war, you are a retard. We have done this before. This isn't new. Weak, soft, anti-American terrorist sympathizer. These are some of the things that you would have been called for opposing the Iraq War in 2003 or Vietnam in the 1960s. And today, you'll be called similar things for opposing America's involvement in the Ukraine and Russian conflict. Well, you're not. What you actually are is brave. Being anti-war is always unpopular, but it takes people who are willing to stand up and say, no, this isn't our fight. No, we don't need to be involved. And the people who are weak and soft are the people who want to steal from you to get us involved in a conflict we have no business in. The war on poverty was won by poverty. The war on drugs was won by drugs. The war on Afghanistan was won by goat herders with an average income of $500 per year. Don Baldock and Maggie Hassan want us to fight China and Russia simultaneously.
What boggles my mind, Steve, is the fact that we haven't gone all in on this already. Diplomatically, informationally, militarily, and economically.
Everything's on the table when it comes to keeping our country safe. And what we've seen from Russia in particular recently.
And we can't take any pressure off China either. We got to go after China because they're in this with them.
Maggie Hassan and Don Baldock want to take your money so that your children can die and America can be hurt. This November, be brave, be anti-war, be a libertarian. I'm Jeremy Kauffman, and I'm serious.
There you go. And we got the serious man himself back on the show today. Jeremy Kauffman, how you doing, man?
That's right. Thank you for having me. And for those who don't know, Reed is a producer on that ad. So Reed was in the room helping every step of the way. He even brought some Nazi uniforms that we didn't get to, put to use. So he was very prepared. So, definitely gets the producer credit.
I've had a lot of fun making those ads with you. I feel like we sort of have an idea of what we're going to do when we go in, but every ad that I've helped with, we just have a kind of rough idea, and then you just kind of sit in front of the camera and spitball your way through it, and then we end up with some amazing art like that. It's a very fun experience. I've loved all of them.
You've produced at least 3 of them now. Yeah. So I think we've been talking. We're going to probably keep this going, and some, not just me. We're going to we'll mix it up, but we like the idea of keeping this going. I think so. Something because it's been working, right? We've been getting good traction on these videos, good organic traction.
Yeah. So what gives that ad so much extra power? If you've been around a while and you've been watching Jeremy Kauffman's campaign since the beginning, all of the other ads are funny. And then this one wasn't. So it was kind of like it gave it that much more oomph to it. And everyone, I think, was anticipating another funny ad, and then they watched it and they were like, holy shit. But your strategy throughout this whole campaign has been to get a lot of traction through being provocative or being funny or being a little bit satirical sometimes. And these ads have gotten hundreds of thousands of views altogether. Do you know, have you seen like statistics for other political ads, like how these stack up? It seems like compared to any other normal Libertarian Party ads that are put out, these get way more virality to them.
Definitely true for Libertarian Party ads. I suspect, but can't speak authoritatively off the top of my head, that this is true for just most political ads. Certainly, at least on the YouTube, or places like that, where you're just talking about organic traffic as opposed to paid traffic, right? So we didn't pay for any of the views. We're in the millions across the ads, I believe. So I got to think that is a very high level of performance. Oddly, the press hasn't talked about these organic successes. Why the political press hasn't talked about these at all, despite them getting mentioned by major influencers and some pretty big attention.
Yeah, you've been really like black holed by the media. I mean, you got one interview, I forget, was it with WMUR like a couple months ago, where it was just the written responses to all the questions, and then you just got an interview with NHPR, and aside from that, you haven't gotten much mainstream press at all. Is that right?
Yeah, it's pretty frustrating. I did actually get a call from the union leader today that they may be writing a story about me being locked out of Twitter currently. So, but that's what they'll cover. They'll cover if it's drama. They'll cover if they have an angle to talk about libertarians being crazy or whatever. Look at the press that look at how when they were willing to talk about LPNH, right? Like basically, there's never going to be any engagement unless there's some ability, for them to portray you as crazy, or extreme. At least that's what it appears. That's the only times they've been willing, to talk about us. So
yeah, actually, I have a clip from an interview I did with you 4 months ago at PorkFest, and at the time, I didn't realize how prophetic what you were saying was, but let's just watch it. It's a couple minutes long, and I think everything that you said ended up being kind of true.
Think about Vermin Supreme and like how he did his campaigns. Like, what have you taken away from that, or has that been any inspiration for any of this, or just thoughts on that?
Yeah, so there's things that I like and don't like about Vermin. I think Vermin is very entertaining. My biggest problem with Vermin is like I think he may actually just be a communist, and hopefully he's not. I'm not certain. Vermin, feel free. I'm happy to have we can have a conversation about it. But like, he seems, at least if it's not him, it's the people he's attracting that, to me would not actually share my principles. So that's actually what I dislike. The idea of some of the stuff that he does, like, yes, some of the stuff that he does that's satirical, I think is very good. What I'm trying to do that's a little bit different is like I'm trying to have substance behind it. Like, if we want to talk economics, if we want to talk about why libertarian ideas are better, if we want to talk about policy or these kinds of things, like I'm not just going to do comedy. But I think that if you're just doing the serious stuff, no one knows and no one cares. The amount of people who are, making choices based off of even a serious consideration of the actual policies involved is under 10%. It's probably like 5%. It's like no one, okay? So like, if you want to have a hope of like building a base of people, like it's got to be some way of engaging with them that's not check out how much, check out these very like logical arguments as to why these ideas are correct. 95% of people, or some large amount of people, they're not going to be able to follow them. Whereas like they can follow a joke, they can feel like that's something that they, there's some affinity towards. And it's not just about humor. I'd like to be doing other traditional campaign stuff. We're doing meet and greets and other things like this to get out there and to meet people.
So what you said there about the percentage of people who end up listening to you or believing what you say because of logical arguments is such a tiny, tiny percentage. And with the Libertarian Party in New Hampshire, we made a lot of provocative tweets over the last several months. And now we have, we have news organizations from around the world sending us messages, asking us what our opinion is on the war in Ukraine, asking us, what we think about establishment political figures because we said some kind of stupid, crazy shit. And now they're suddenly paying attention to us. And it almost feels like now, every time something happens, a lot of these news publications and newspapers and media organizations, they're watching the Libertarian Party in New Hampshire to see what we're going to say. And now we're the largest affiliate on Twitter by a pretty large margin. So that strategy seems to have worked. I just hope we can somehow turn the attention into support. That's the hard part right there, it seems to be.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's something that is going to take time, regardless. We're building this brand, building this brand up over time. And I think everything you said is correct about in terms of the ways that we've established ourselves already. And I think, it's been, I guess I don't know how much we succeeded at that other side of it. We succeeded at a very important side of it, of like pushing a narrative, creating a space for this set of beliefs, right? Where I think like the LP kind of failed in that during COVID. And here on this war issue, I think we did a very good job with that, creating, even if we were stupid about it at times. Like, that's okay. Like, I would have rather, at least for me, I would have rather had the LP have been like over the line and said some stupid things about lockdowns. Like, maybe a lot of people think comparing it to Nazi stuff was dumb, but I would have rather had them do that and be over the line in how against it they were, than to do, kind of like nothing. Right. And so this is one where I do think we did a good job creating that kind of space for the, space for the opinion, because we were so vociferously, kind of against it. In terms of in-state, I think like there were some, it definitely brought some people in state, because we had a variety of national libertarian, national anti-war types, some national conservatives, kind of sharing some of the media. So it definitely helped. I think we have more to do, more with the billboard type stuff, doing more in-state, where like, let's get the local press to be talking about us. Let's get the local Facebook groups to be talking about us, not and hopefully in at least a mixed way. Get them to and do the same kind of stuff that we've been doing on social media. Use some of that to get attention inside of the state is something that I think we should be thinking about as the party moves forward. After the election, well, through the election, but afterwards as well.
Sure. Yeah. It's always been amazing to me how averse to negative press libertarians are. And I understand that some press is just negative. I wouldn't deny that. But for the most part, any press you're going to get, if you're pushing back against the establishment narrative on anything, is going to be negative. I mean, they'll call you some derogatory term, conspiracy theorist, white supremacist, whatever. And I feel like Donald Trump really showed us that the only way you garner press attention when they hate you is by being a provocateur and, kind of sabotaging their narrative and just throwing bombs and saying outrageous stuff. They'll talk about you nonstop, because if you're seeking to undermine the machine and have the machine report on your undermining of them in a positive light, it's just never going to happen. So I'm not saying like always say the craziest shit ever. And I do think you can have press that is just a net negative. But for the most part, I think if you're doing a good job, they're going to write about you negatively in general.
Yeah. Yes, at least most of the sort of establishment press. Or you're playing, so another way you can get them, this is just no disagreement by this, but you can get it if you're playing a role. So if they have a story they want to tell, so if they want to tell a story of, the Republicans subverting the rule of law, and you can be a libertarian, lawyer who solidifies that, that then they might be willing to use you in that kind of way. But if you're talking about, if you want to be getting your ideas through in a way that they would disagree with, they're not going to do that without there being some critical, at least some critical aspect to it. Or even they'll always do the sort of what's it called, like the Russell conjugation, the emotive conjugation, I am firm. like they are stubborn, you are obstinate or whatever, where it's like, it's the same. It's if it's the libertarian, they use the negative emotive words. If it's their side, they use the positively emoted words that both mean the same thing, resolute versus firm versus obstinate versus stubborn, but they'll always pick the word that matches, sort of their agenda. The New Yorker article about Carla, a very recent one came out in the New Yorker. Carla Gericke, the president of the Free State Project, got a big mention in it, and they make sure to sort of point, they call her anti-vax. They've got to work that. They've got to make sure they give the code words, sort of for their audience that tell you exactly what to think.
Yeah, and I think a lot of these insults have just lost any potency they had, and now they've almost become they've almost become compliments. I mean, you and I have both been written up by the Southern Poverty Law Center, and I know people who are jealous of us for getting a hit piece written about us, because these days, if you aren't called any of these derogatory terms, it's obvious that you're not actually doing anything to piss people off in the first place. So I don't think anyone who watches my show is contemplating voting for Maggie Hassan. She's, I don't really think she's any sort of unique evil necessarily, but she's just such an establishment Democrat, typical dumb, fall in line left winger. She voted for the $40 billion to Ukraine. And actually some of the things that are like explicitly bad about her are things where she actually didn't vote with the Democrat Party. Like I remember, I think it was in 2019 or 2020, I forget which year, she voted with the Republicans to not overturn the Patriot Act. She and Jeanne Shaheen were two Democrats who crossed the aisle and voted with most of the Republicans against the position we would want. So I wouldn't say they're necessarily crazy communist lefties. She's just a horrible establishment Democrat. But aside from that vote, for the most part, we can always expect what she's going to do. Don Baldock actually scares me more than her. I think overall, I tend to agree with him more on, at least most of the domestic issues. But he's a firecracker. You never know like what he's going to say. Justin O'Donnell put it pretty well. He said, I know how did he say it? It was like I know what Maggie Hassan's price is. I know who can buy her. Don Baldock, I have no idea like what his floor is. It seems like it's pretty low. Like he'd be willing to do anything for anybody. Some of the stuff he said about foreign policy, and then he also like you never know. You can't ever pin him down on anything. Like you ask him a question about something in front of one audience, he'll give one answer, and then he'll give a completely different answer to another audience. But I just wanted your reflection on that. Do you agree with that sentiment mostly, or what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's entirely true. In terms of Baldock, certainly it's unclear. I think he would be a loose cannon. I think he would be very bad on foreign policy, and military related issues in general. I think he is someone who appears to be honestly just like sort of somewhat gullible in terms of some of the stories and narratives that he's himself fallen for and repeated. And Hassan's exactly what you described, just the complete Democratic suit. If she's going to break with her team, it is generally for the authoritarian positions of the other side. So when she can be bipartisan, it's to do something that libertarians would generally be against. So I don't think there's a good option. And actually, well, you might not even know this. I don't know, because you weren't at the very beginning of the campaign. I don't think you were involved. But it was one of my requirements. I didn't want to run against Bruce Fenton. Bruce Fenton wasn't in the race. But when they asked me to run, I wrote up just a page of my thoughts. And one of my biggest objections was because I think there are good liberty Republicans, here. I think we have ANCAPs getting elected to the state house, literally ANCAPs in office right now, running under the Republican label. And I don't want to be messing up, I don't want to be messing their progress up,
Yeah,
so,
no,
but here, he's not one of them. He's not one of them. He's not part of that. Don Baldock is not a secret libertarian. Quite frankly, the libertarians don't usually keep it a secret. So he's pretty clearly, not on the, on the libertarian side of things. I hesitate to ever say anything positive about my opponent, and so this one I would say is a mixed bag. But I do think he is more likely to create attention for New Hampshire. So I will say this, because he's like kind of crazy guy, right? So like,
yeah,
the fact that he might do or say crazy things in office is likely to continue. And so as someone who likes New Hampshire being in the news, I'm not saying it's like good or whatever. Well, no, it kind of would be good. If he's getting us in the news, it kind of would be good for like bad reasons, but in the sort of, in terms of what is it good for attention for New Hampshire? Yeah. Like, so that's the one thing I would give him, is that he might do crazy stuff that would get New Hampshire in the news.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't know, is that too much of an endorsement? I don't mean to be too kind to my
No, I think saying that, if AOC were our senator, we'd also get in the news a lot. So I mean, it's not a false statement.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I wanted to talk about some of this protest, because this was new for me. It was new for you too. And I got to tell your audience, Reed, it turns out, is a protest junkie. Okay. He is into it. He liked it. So I Reed's audience encourage more Reed on the street type performances. But this is what we just went and did last week. So we went out to the debate.
Yeah, so let's talk about that a little bit. You were excluded from the debate because they put polling requirements on your admittance. And as far as I know, every libertarian around the country who was in the debates, Shane Hazel, Chase Oliver, all those guys, and then there was one in Arkansas, I think, who was for Congress. None of them had any polling requirements that they had to clear. It was just like the donations and making it on the ballot and the other stuff that we also had to qualify for. But you were excluded, so we decided, okay, why don't we go there and just have a show of protest? And so we showed up, and there were, I would say, around 50 Maggie Hassan supporters with these big, like 4x8, Maggie Hassan signs. And the only words they could say were Maggie Hassan. That was it, and it was just going on for like half an hour or whatever. So there were only 2 Don Baldick supporters there, and they were sort of nice, so we didn't really feel the need to harass them so much. But after you got kicked off of the entrance, because you were standing up on a bench right near the entrance with a microphone, kind of making your presence known, you got kicked off, so we had to go to the public sidewalk. We decided to really get into it with the Maggie Hassan supporters, and it was a lot of fun. But why don't you tell everyone what happened? It wasn't a very organic show of support for Maggie, was it?
Yeah, well, that's true. They were almost certainly paid to be there directly or indirectly, like, part of NGOs, because it was not, we saw a truck come up, all the signs went back in the truck as soon as the photos were taken. So it was not just people, showing up out of the goodness of their hearts. There was something going on there, because they all left at exactly the same time and put all their signs back in one vehicle. It was, this was new to me. I'm not like, I've done like some protests. I did some protests during the reopen stuff, and I've gone to some other, sine waves and things, but never one that got confrontational in any way. There's a little bit of confrontation at reopen, but not too much. And so, but all they would do is chant. So we were trying to figure out, some way of engaging with them, which was very difficult. And there really wasn't, we offered one of the most sort of telling things is like, we were saying, hey, take the mic. We'll step away from you. You can have the mic, speak positively about your candidate. Tell us why the libertarians should vote for you. We want to hear your side. And there's just no ability to articulate it, right? There's no ability to have a conversation. And it definitely does make me think about like, where do you go as a society, from there, right? If this is my neighbor, and there's no ability to even have that kind of, back and forth. It does seem like that person is kind of saying like, no, I want this to be, a struggle, right? I want there to be some sort of violent conflict between us, because when you're saying that we can't speak, that's like sort of, and I'm not encouraging that, but like, that's where are we going from here? Because I'm telling you, right? Like our view sort of as libertarians is that you are enacting violence against us. And the mayor's like, oh, I don't want to talk to you about it. I'm just going to keep doing it. So like what are we supposed to do about it? And of course, we are trying to build our movement and get more and more people here, and we're trying to win, through democracy and through the ballot box and all of these things. But it definitely does get me up, because it's like, you can't. You're here. You're trying to do things that are, in my view, like in our view, I would say, hurting us, that are violence against us, and you can't even talk to us about what you're doing. So it's disturbing.
Yeah, I mean, I am no lover of democracy in the way that I don't think it's a pure form of government, or the ultimate thing we should aspire toward. But given the system that we do have, which is a quasi-democratic system where the government that wins does have authority to take your property and do whatever they want, basically, given that system, when they're excluding people from being on the ballot, or from getting into the debates, or getting any press, that is not a good thing. So a lot of libertarians constantly shit on democracy, and their criticisms of democracy are correct, but this is kind of that stop living in Ancapistan in your head thing. I mean, this is the system we have, and so when your voice isn't allowed on the debate stage, we're just kind of encouraging this retarded back and forth dogmatic monkey spurging that you're talking about, that we saw from the Maggie Hassan people, and the Baldock pushback isn't really that much different either. So all that to say, like, it does make a difference if we're allowed into these conversations and people can hear a different perspective, I would think.
Yeah, that's right. And it is, I mean, we can, take it as an opportunity for ourselves. It is another opportunity to create, media, to get attention. We did do a little bit, I think, with this one, but this is something that, we'll continue to figure out how to do. I think, by the way, as an aside, we should get into the sort of whatever they're called, like the town meeting game. Do speeches at these town sessions, and take the videos and share the videos to our channels and our groups, and because it's another way you can kind of get your signal through to some people, as well as build a kind of movement on top of the fact that you're doing. And I know other people are doing this. I'm not trying. It's not some new idea, but it's an idea that I like, and we haven't really gotten into that one yet around here.
Yeah. So speaking of just drawing more attention to things, Rand Paul and Tulsi Gabbard, who are both known as anti-war voices, they've both endorsed Don Baldock, which kind of shocked a lot of people. I'd say the Tulsi endorsement was a little more surprising, but the Rand Paul one was I don't know. This is kind of his MO with the Republicans got to hold the power, so I have more influence, is kind of what he'll always say. And as cool as it would have been if both of them endorsed you, that wasn't going to happen. So I feel like them endorsing this awful candidate at least draws more attention to this race, and then maybe gives you more leverage, because the amount of vitriol we're getting from the Republicans right now for possibly spoiling the vote, a lot of libertarians push back against that and say, don't blame me. And I say, no, blame me. Sure, please blame us. Please say it's our fault that you lost. But after you do that, do a little self-reflection and wonder why we would cause you to lose. And I actually tend to think Baldock is going to win at this point. But if he does lose barely to Maggie Hassan, and then you get 4% or whatever that covers the spread, I feel like that is an exercise of our true power. And it's not that we want Maggie Hassan to win. It's just that, look, you have not done your job to get our support. You don't own libertarians just because you're slightly better than the Democrat. If you guys had elected Bruce Fenton, all of us would vote for you. All of us would have been, I would have started campaigning for him if he had won the primary. But don't you think that's kind of what our goal should be as libertarians if we're going to do the election game, unless it gets to a point where he can win? It seems like leveraging the vote and playing that spoiler role is exercising the only political power that we really have.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. 100%. I mean, we should absolutely own it. We should be proud of it. And we should say, and especially here where so inside the way I see it, I don't know if this is too inside baseball, New Hampshire politics, or maybe your audience will like this, but there's basically three camps inside of the Republican Party that are of approximately similar size, and it's the Liberty wing, the MAGA wing, and the sort of like old school establishment wing, not the neocon wing. They're not like neocon, but they're like, you know, they're I don't know, like Mitt Romney. Would you call Mitt Romney a neocon? Like,
yeah,
you would? Okay.
Yeah.
So they're like Romney-esque. I mean, they're not war hawks, but they're like, you know, they're that kind of Republican, right? They're even a little socially progressive, but they're like that kind of New England Republican. So you got that camp, the MAGA camp, and the Liberty camp, and they're all like probably approximately the same size. You could even add up the primaries in the like you look at the congressional primaries, we had 3 candidates, one in each lane that all got around 30 in CD2. And if you add up, like, I mean, I do think some of the Liberty wing went with Baldock because they thought Fenton couldn't win and found Baldock preferable to Morse would have been the establishment one, and Baldock's the MAGA one that I think like pulled some of the Liberty wing because they like Baldock more than Morse and didn't see Fenton, or the other Liberty one would have been Vikram probably, right? And so yeah, although he straddles into the old school Republican, I think. So yeah, that's kind of what it is. And so there's this inside of the Republican Party of New Hampshire, there's this sort of, and so we want the Libertarian Party, I think, of New Hampshire should kind of be like, well, we don't want to challenge, if you're running the Liberty Republicans, the ones that are libertarians, you know, we don't want to really be fighting with those. If you're going to run MAGA people and you're going to run, you know, people who love the welfare state but have an R next to their name, then, you know, we don't care. We don't care if you lose, you know? And so that's kind of where I think we should be.
Yeah. So do you know this guy? I don't really know who this is. It says the system is down, say my name. I know he had like some capacity of
some capacity, very little capacity. Actually, he has limited mental capacity. I think he has Down syndrome. That's the Down.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think this. I believe this is a child with Down syndrome. I mean, so yeah, a child with Down syndrome named Dan Smots helps make videos for my campaign.
They're not bad. They're okay.
They're all right.
Yeah.
They're not too bad.
So I actually sometimes I feel like the MAGA candidate can be more dangerous than the establishment candidate because there's a sort of a veneer of perceived rebellion that doesn't really exist. So if Morse were the candidate, you don't have that, you know, that fake appearance of, oh, this guy's really going to take it to Washington and, you know, stick it to him. No one thinks that. And then the same is true with Maggie Hassan. No one thinks she's going to stick it to him. Where if you have Don Baldock, that is the perception, but it's rarely the reality. It's kind of like with Trump. Like Trump certainly had that veneer of sticking it to Washington and having an independent streak, but it was very rare that his actions actually followed any of his rhetoric. Like 9 times out of 10, he would cave to whatever they wanted. So do you think there's some truth to that? And that in some ways, Baldock could actually be sedating the anti-war or anti-establishment, anti-police state because they'll think, oh yeah, this guy's on my side. But then when he gets in there, you know, he's shown that he doesn't have any backbone. He won't stand up for you not being in the debates. He won't answer a question from me. You know, they kick me out of a political rally because they're afraid of the question I'm going to ask and then tell me that they'll get him on my show. They don't do that. Then they said, okay, email us a question. I email them the question. They don't give me a response. And then, you know, the election stuff, he ran his entire campaign or his entire primary campaign saying the 2020 election was stolen. Then as soon as he wins, he flip-flops and says, actually, no, it was legitimate. So there's obviously no reason to think this guy will actually do anything to counter his masters, but there's going to be this perception that he will. And I feel like that is almost more dangerous than the other options.
Yeah, very much. I think it's very similar to a Trump where there might be some rhetoric that can occasionally sound good. Like I do believe Baldock has suggested that we should abolish the FBI, but like literally zero chance. And like most likely what would actually happen is when the bill comes up to give the FBI more money, he would just vote for it, right? And how they're able to maintain you know, how Trump today can have anyone, believing that that stuff about him when he was just as responsible for the inflation as Biden and was bad on COVID for most of COVID and all of these things. it's just crazy that reputation, can even be there. So I do think, there are some of those people like, once there, sort of MAGA type Republicans who want some, who have sort of been told lies about the government and how it works, sort of the nature of state power. Like if you can get them to understand some of that stuff, which I think current events have done, more than ever before, I do think it's an audience that can be brought, into the libertarian wing.
Oh yeah, no, I agree with that. And what I don't understand is a lot of people don't want you to step on those people's toes and don't want you to try to correct them. They're like, hey, easy, easy, easy. Where I think, no, this is like the prime opportunity for those people to see the truth of the situation. And I've had a lot of success with telling them like, hey, look, this guy sold you out. Or, hey, look, the Republicans created the Department of Homeland Security. And for the most part, they're really perceptive to it when you start telling them the truth about what's actually going on. And there's this idea that we really need to coddle them and just treat them like they're snowflakes. And my thought is, man, they have just been betrayed so hard, and everything that they loved has been like ripped away from them over the last couple of years. The last thing you have to do is coddle them. The first thing is like, hey, now that you're here, like, check out what's actually going on. Do you agree with that, or what do you think?
My thought is that it's probably both. Like, you probably want to be having some messages that are like that, and then some messages that are more coddling. It's a little bit of push and a little bit of pull, and you want to have both. You definitely, I would agree completely that you should not just be like coddling them. You need to get them to see, to recognize some of those truths. You do need some of the messages to be in that line, and it's also very important. One of the worst things, and we should actually consider them. One of the ways I think the Libertarian Party actually suffered some problems. It did. By being very anti-war in the early 2000s, it got anti-war leftists who weren't actually libertarians, into the party, and some of those people ended up causing trouble down the road because they didn't understand what libertarianism, was. Right. I think it's the same kind of thing here, where like we want to be welcoming these people in, but one of the things that those punches in the face, or those sort of messages do is like they also need to make sure that they're like accepting and understanding some aspects of what libertarianism is and what libertarianism means. Because if you're getting people into your party under a sort of false pretense, and they eventually recognize that, there's some chance they'll leave the party. There's another chance they'll just try to change the party to match what they thought you said what they thought it was, right? And just change the meaning of the word. And so, I think that's a reason that some of in terms of libertarian perspective, say on cops or immigration or places where the right may disagree with the libertarian the most, that we need to, we shouldn't be hiding those things.
No, I totally agree. So a lot of people have seen this clip that I'm going to play next. It's been circulated a lot by us, and it's Don Baldock right after Putin started moving into eastern Ukraine. And, he, like I said, he tries to snake his way out of things. He tries to say one thing to another audience and one to another, and then he tries to act like he's never said things that he has said. So I'm just going to play this clip and then pause it occasionally and talk about what he's actually saying, because this is actually pretty scary stuff.
Resistance that's going to win. But what boggles my mind, Steve, is the fact that we haven't gone all in on this already. Diplomatically, informationally, militarily, and economically. This is not a time for pause right now. We need to get in there, and we need to help them on the ground.
So this is February 28th, so just like a couple days after the invasion starts, and he's complaining basically that Joe Biden isn't doing enough, because he says we need to get in there, we need to help them on the ground. I don't know why we haven't gone all in on this already. Just kind of like scary sentiments to have at this time. It doesn't show much pause and thought and consideration about what's going on.
We have columns of his troops lined up, ready to be interdicted.
So there he's talking about Putin. He says we have columns of his troops lined up, ready to be interdicted. So what that means is, you got tanks and artillery and Russian troops all lined up, ready for us to airstrike them. That's literally what he's saying right there. I'll keep.
And we need to give that kind of help to the Ukrainians. But we're just sitting back and we're not doing anything, and we're just saying, oh, everything is on the table. Well, now's the time. Putin is a global threat. He is an enemy to the world, and that's what we have to start telling people he is. And we can't take any pressure off China either. We got to go after China because they're in this with them, and we don't want them going into Taiwan.
So this conversation has nothing to do with China. It's all about Putin invading Ukraine, and then he has to just throw in there, oh, by the way, also, we can't just, face off with Russia. We got to go after China because, if we show any amount of weakness here, China is going to take an initiative and invade Taiwan.
This is huge, and we got to come together. We got to lead the world in supporting President Zelensky. And
we got to lead the world. This guy has, in other speeches to people, said we can't be the policeman of the world anymore. Like he's kind of trying to agree with what Trump says. We got to lead the world in supporting Zelensky. How is that not policing the world? It's kind of the same thing.
Supporting the Ukrainians. And what we have been doing now is just standing by. There is more to do. We can do it, and we should be doing it.
Yeah, so you can watch that whole clip. It's on Twitter. It's on my YouTube channel and other places. And there's some pushback, and the guy says, wait, you're not saying we should put like U.S. troops, like ground troops on the ground, are you? And he says, no, but we can do indirect fires. We could put CIA and special forces on the ground. And this was all like so nuts that Corey Lewandowski, Trump advisor, actually came out and said this disqualifies Don Baldock from ever being a U.S. senator. Like, this is just so. And then Jennifer Griffin, the Pentagon correspondent for Fox News, also made a statement saying, this guy's nuts, basically. We're not going to do any of that stuff. To suggest we would dare to do any of that stuff to give Putin an excuse to expand this conflict is just absolutely crazy. So like I was saying earlier, Maggie Hassan sucks. She says, she goes along with the Democrat Party on basically everything. I don't know if she has ever been called out by the Pentagon for being too hawkish. Like, this is what we're looking at with Don Baldock. So any comments from you on that whole segment?
Yeah, well, one, I started to laugh a couple of times because it's so absurd, but I probably shouldn't be because it's dangerous. It's serious, right? This is serious stuff. And it's very, very telling that this is his first reaction is to fight, to want to fight. Because you only get one first reaction. You can be wrong about stuff, right? You can change your mind. Like if your first reaction to COVID was, I think COVID is exceedingly dangerous and I'm super worried, even though I'm young and healthy. And then later you got new evidence and you change your mind. There's nothing wrong with that. If your first reaction to COVID was, we need to lock down, we need to shut everything down, you only get one first reaction. That says something about you. That says that if this happened again, you're going to be that same kind of person again, most likely. So, I mean, Don Baldock shows that he is the kind of person who goes to the reaction of let's fight, of I want to fight, right? That is where he goes first. Now, for political purposes, because he wants to get into office, I'm sure he's walked some of this stuff back, and I'm sure he'll change his mind. And I'm sure there are on some issues he's completely sort of narcissistically, soullessly just looking for the right thing to say. But something like this, I think this is him, right? I think when you see something like this, I think this is kind of showing you the closest to his real mentality. I mean, look, the guy was a general for 20 years. I mean, if you're like, you want to fight, that's why you're a general, right? That's you want to do it. So I think that I think it's very clear that that's the kind of person he is, and I think it's very dangerous to have that kind of person making these kinds of decisions, because they've just simply led us into unnecessary conflict after unnecessary conflict.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not just with this. He also, like with everything, he tries to play both sides a little bit. So he said he supported Trump's withdrawal from Afghanistan, but then when the time actually came, he was saying this is wishful thinking to think we can leave right now. This is insane. I said back in 2013 and 2014 that switching from combat operations to non-combat operations was a mistake. This is going to make us look weak to the entire world. We can't do this. So that's not just saying like, hey, we should have gotten more people out and the troops should have been last to leave and we should have blown up more of this equipment. He's specifically saying back in 2013 and 14, I said switching from combat to non-combat operations was a mistake. And this is wishful thinking to think we can get out of here. And then people also forget that Biden's deadline was like 4.5 months after Trump's deadline to be out of Afghanistan. Like Trump's deal with the Taliban was we will be gone in May, and Biden decided to push it back to September 11th to have some sort of virtue signal, symbolistic leaving, 20 years after the war on terror started or whatever. But this is nothing new with Baldic. And then I just wanted to show everyone this tweet. So this is from October 27th, which is 4 days ago. So this isn't from February. And this really backs up what you were just saying about him. I've served as a military leader across the globe and know we must counter China and rogue nations like North Korea and Iran. We must overhaul American diplomacy to focus on our national security, our supply chains, and our economy. So we need to go after China and rogue nations like North Korea and Iran. And then he's made other statements recently where his criticism of the Biden administration is their strategy with Russia. It's not that they're escalating tensions with Russia. It's not that we could get into World War III. It's that they have an aimless strategy. And from that video clip that we just played, we know what his strategy is. His strategy is like get in there and throw shit.
He's saying that, well, like I could get us to a World War III way faster than Biden is doing it. Let me in there. Let me give me a chance. So
yeah, exactly. Just what are your thoughts? Just any.
I mean, it's the same thing, right? Like this is what he believes. This is what he believes. In the same way that and so this is he might have the right person whisper in his ear that you're not going to get the advertising money unless you correct this, and so he might walk the back from time to time. But like this is who he is, right? So I mean, on this issue, he is as bad as it gets. I think on foreign policy, he is as bad as it gets.
Yeah. So just a side comment: is it withdrawal or withdrawal? How are you supposed to say that word? Because I guess I'm saying it wrong. Apparently, I don't know.
I think it's just withdraw.
Withdraw. Well, when it's the noun, like withdrawal with an L on the end. I don't know but
I guess is it a
I don't know. I guess whatever. Sorry if I'm saying it wrong, everybody.
Look, this just shows how prepared I am to never have to do this. So like withdrawal troops, I'm never going to put them there in the first place. Okay, so I don't. We'll learn later.
Yeah, it's like Gary Johnson's Aleppo moment. I don't know how to say withdrawal, but I don't have to know how because I'm never gonna.
That's what I thought. Look, if Gary Johnson, he's like, look, if I had been president, no one in America would know where Aleppo is because we wouldn't have been involved. That is the answer in my opinion.
Exactly. So we're coming down to the election here. It's a week from tomorrow. Like we were talking about, we had a fun protest on Thursday last week. Wednesday this week, so the day after tomorrow, if you're watching this live, we are planning to do the same thing in Manchester. And I'll have more details up soon. I'll post something to my community page on YouTube here. But then if you go to Jeremy for New Hampshire on Facebook, we're actually going to set up an event. And it's going to be Wednesday afternoon. We're going to try to get as many people with signs.
It's evening.
It's evening, but I think we might even want to get there kind of early.
Gotcha.
But I'll have an exact time and everything. But if you guys have Jeremy Kauffman signs, or if you don't, I'll bring some extras. If you have anything that can amplify your voice, a bullhorn, loudspeaker, microphone with a, whatever, we're going to try to make a real showing like we did on Thursday. And this is actually, you'll appreciate this, Jeremy. So I have a big Tulsi Gabbard sign from 2020. And because she endorsed the war candidate, I'm just going to spray paint over it in black and then put the yellow Kauffman letters over it. So I'm going to repurpose that sign for her betrayal of the anti-war movement and support the only anti-war guy. But come help us Wednesday night. That'll be great. And what else do you want people to do to help you out over the next week, Jeremy?
Well, I'd love it if people, for people not in New Hampshire, keep sharing the ads. If you like the ads and you haven't donated yet, we can still put your money to use. We just put up a set of billboards. We're going to do another set of billboards. And that money, we've been making very, very good use of that money. Every dollar, I think I'm going to do a report after the election and actually sort of summarize how we spent the money for everyone so they can see it. But I think we've been spending the money in a very good way. And so, I'd love it if you could give us some money. If you're not in New Hampshire, if you're in New Hampshire, come out to the LP events, get involved. And this isn't one to do in the next 8 days, but come out for a visit. If you like Reed's content, if you're listening to Reed regularly, you've got to come check out what's going on in New Hampshire. We're doing something really special, and it's something that everyone needs to at least check out. Even if you don't think you're going to ever move here, come out for a vacation, come out to Pork Fest, come out for a visit, and come see what we're doing.
So last question. You are locked out of your Twitter account because you said Kyle Rittenhouse did nothing wrong. What are your thoughts on Elon Musk taking over? You optimistic, trying to have no guesses just in case it turns out not being a huge upgrade? What are your thoughts?
I'm pretty optimistic, actually. I don't think he's all the way to libertarian, but I think he's pretty good on free speech. I think he's also very much not an egalitarian, which is important for me. Like, he thinks, he understands that, he understands that, and so he wants there to be this kind of competition. He wants there to be competition in marketplaces. He wants there to be competition over ideas. And so I think that's a good person, and he seems to respect choice. He talks about there being people being able to decide their algorithms or decide what they get to see. So, I mean, he does talk and not deliver sometimes. I will say that. That's certainly something we've seen from Elon. So if your attitude is, hey, this guy talks and doesn't deliver, so I'll believe it when I see it, very respectful. I get that. And there's a part of me that's that way. But nonetheless, I am optimistic because he does deliver at least some of the time. And so I think it would be a big deal for to have him deliver here. And obviously, it's hard. Every major big tech site has a slant that makes it hard to be a libertarian. I mean, there are so many libertarians have gotten they'll ding you for a meme you posted 8 years ago now, retroactively. And so many of these accounts are dinged or whatever. It was hard for my campaign. We actually, I don't think ever were able to get even Facebook advertisements approved for our political campaign because literally every I don't know what this says about LPNH members, but if you've had accounts your content flagged or whatever, it's they won't let you run ads. So it's crazy how hard it can be.
Yeah, I mean, the things they would ding an account for is 3 years ago posting a meme that says suicide hotline, how may I help you? And it shows Hillary Clinton saying, I'd like to place an order. I mean, it's not like people, calling people racial slurs or posting neo-Nazi material or something. It's over really menial, stupid shit that they would ding
right.
accounts
I mean, again, we're talking about, Rachel Levine is a man. Kyle Rittenhouse did nothing wrong. This level of stuff that is look, you can disagree. And by the way, I'm not saying that Rachel Levine is a man is a libertarian statement, to be clear. I would say Kyle Rittenhouse did nothing wrong is them. Yes. It's crazy that you can't say, and on all of them. I mean, it's just there's such a left cultural bias, throughout journalism, throughout big tech. I mean, and it's just completely insane the way that they've been able, to dominate these venues.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thanks for joining me, man. I am going to be with you all the way to the end. It's coming up here. It's been great being on your campaign. I've had tons of fun, and I'm so glad I moved back to New Hampshire. As you know, you're one of the biggest reasons I decided to come back. I saw you on Timcast, and I actually had you on my show to kind of refute the good things about New Hampshire. And you were telling me about all the progress the Free State Project has made over the last couple of years, and I ultimately decided to move back. So at least for now, I'm here for the foreseeable future. And I think, like you said, everyone who, who's interested in the way the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire messages, or you like my show and you like Jeremy's perspective, you absolutely should come to New Hampshire, check it out. Even if you don't end up moving here, just visit, check it out and see if you like it. Maybe you will. Yeah, it does get cold, and yeah, there are bugs in the spring, but also we nullified all gun laws. So, maybe it's worth it in the end. But yeah, guys, if you're in New Hampshire, and you're a libertarian, I really think we can't just signal to the Republicans that they own us, because they don't. We're not Republicans. If they're going to run people who are sympathetic to our ideas, I say we throw him a bone. And I tried. I know a lot of us voted for Bruce Fenton in the primary. It didn't matter. But Don Baldick doesn't represent us. He's actually terrifying in a lot of ways. And even if he ends up winning and beating Hassan, it still sends a message to them. If a lot of libertarians still didn't bother to vote for him, even if he wins, it sends them a message like, hey, yeah, you won, but you barely scraped it out. You better be careful. If you had won someone more sympathetic to our ideas, you would have won by a lot more. Jeremy, good luck. Any final statements you got for people to pay attention to anything or anything last you want to say?
We'll have to talk about this off air, but we've got to introduce the Reed Coverdale Act next year so we can make New Hampshire even better. We'll have to figure out what that does. But no, that's it. This was great. Thank you so much for having me on. I love being on your show, and it's been great getting to know you.
All right, guys. Links are in the description to follow me on all platforms and to follow Jeremy on all platforms. Like I said, I'll have an event posted on Facebook, which is in the link tree in the description. You can find the Facebook page or just type in Jeremy for New Hampshire on Facebook, and we'll have an event set up for Wednesday. We'd love to see you guys there. It'll be sometime late afternoon. Not sure how. Some of us will probably get there earlier than others to try to set up an area. But yeah, bring anything legal that's able to make noises. Don't bring any explosives or anything like that, but bring loud horns, speakers, anything like that, so we can make as much of a dent as possible. And hopefully we'll see you there.